Hey guys, it's Pam. I am sitting here in my backyard today, so I'm hoping you can hear me. Wow, there's lots of wildlife going on out here. Anyway, I hope you can hear me. I have my mic on right near my where I'm talking, so hopefully you can hear me. But so today I want to talk about composting at home and just give you some really sort of basic facts and tips so you can feel confident about getting started composting at home. So I want to cover a couple of things quickly for you, including I want to talk about, why you should compost in the first place. What do you compost in? Where do you put it in your yard? Maybe most importantly, what do you put in it? And a couple of other options as well. So let's go ahead and get started. Feel free to leave me comments or questions you have below or other tips that you have, since many of you may be already composting, which is awesome. So first of all, why compost in the first place? I think a lot of people may feel like composting is going to smell, it's going to attract rodents, and it's just a bad idea in general, so they just sort of shy away from it. But if you're like any typical family or like our family, you probably throw away some food, every day, multiple times a week, whether it's food scraps from, preparing a meal or from after a meal, or if it's just that stuff in the fridge that you could not get to, like the strawberries I can never get to. There's always some moldy strawberries. You probably are throwing away some food waste, and that's a problem for a couple of reasons. One, it's a kind of a waste of the resources that were used to produce or grow the food in the first place. It's a waste of money, honestly, for throwing food away that you can't get to, and it also contributes to landfill waste. So you might be thinking, well, it's food, it's going to a landfill, it's just food, right? It's going to break down, it's not going to sit there forever, it's not plastic, right? So but unfortunately, a landfill isn't designed to really break down anything. It's really designed to just store trash, and so even food is not going to break down very efficiently in a landfill. So composting, on the other hand, is a really efficient way to break down food waste that then you can actually even reuse in your garden, which in my book is great. Reusing is great. So composting, that's why I think composting is important. And so I want to talk a little bit about, how to get started, kind of the basics of it. It's really not that hard. So you may be wondering what to put compost in, how do you get started? And so I want to give you a couple of options for what to compost in. And I'm actually sitting right in front of one of those, I think, easy options right now. It's a tumbler, it's a compost tumbler, and it's got a handle on the side, and basically you put your material in it, and one of the things composting needs is oxygen, which is not something that's in a landfill. And so you basically just crank the handle and it turns the material that you've put in there. We'll talk about what to put in it in a minute. And it just keeps it aerated. So that's super easy. Another option, which we have done in the past, is just sort of a stationary bin. There's sort of a black plastic bin. You could compost in almost anything, actually. But so for a stationary bin, you're going to need to kind of mix up the materials manually, like with a shovel or anything. You need to mix it up. You won't have the handle to crank it, and so that's another option. You can also do just an open pile, which isn't enclosed in anything. I think, for me anyway, this tumbler was kind of the least intimidating way there's my cat, to start composting. I don't know why, I just think mentally it was sealed, it was a crank on the outside, it just for me seemed the least intimidating way to start. But there are a variety of options in terms of what you can compost in. Now for us, we just put it in our backyard on sort of a level area. It doesn't really get direct sun, but you want it to be on a level area. You don't want it dumping over, and you also want it to be convenient for you because you're going to be making frequent trips to it. To make sure you're getting all your food waste and your food scraps into the compost bin instead of into your trash can or down the drain. So you want to make sure it's convenient. One way to kind of make things a little more convenient is to keep sort of a small pail in your kitchen somewhere, either under a cabinet, under the sink, on your countertop, that you can put kind of your daily food waste in. And again, we're going to talk about what type of food waste we can compost here in a minute, but you'll keep those in the pail, and once it gets full every few days, then you can make your trip out to the compost bin. But still, put this somewhere convenient for you. We have in the past had it on the other side of the yard behind a shed, and didn't see any compost in there for a while. So, so you want to make it convenient. So helicopter overhead. Okay, so that's one way to make it a little more convenient. So, all right, so your first compost pile, I was a little intimidated, but it's really not hard. It's a little more than just dumping like banana peels and leaves in a bin. It's a little more than that. You have to do a little bit more work. But basically what you're aiming for is a good mix of green material, which is like your food waste, your food scraps, grass clippings, and brown materials. So things like dried leaves, pine needles, paper, cardboard that doesn't have any grease or anything on it. Just you can add those kind of things to it, and you're kind of looking for a mix. I've read about 75% brown, 25% green, and so your first pile, you kind of want to start with a little bit of a brown layer, maybe some twigs, things to keep kind of aerated, and then it's kind of like a lasagna. You're going to just kind of add some green material on top of that, and so food waste is really anything: veggie scraps, fruit scraps, old bread, crackers. There are extensive lists online. You can do like grass clippings. Eggshells are fine. You probably want to crush them a little bit so they're smaller to help them break down easier. I think what's maybe more important is what not to put in it, which I'll get to in a second. So those are some examples of green material. And then again, brown can be like dried leaves, small twigs, pine needles, I said. Anyway, you kind of get the idea. So what you're aiming for is a good mix of brown to green. And so that's going to kind of help efficiently break down the material that you're putting into the compost bin. So there are a lot more scientific explanations about what composting is, and I'm happy to link to websites that do that for you, but it's pretty basic. It's brown and green. It's going to break down the organic material and leave you with a great additive that you can put on plants in your soil, all that kind of stuff. It's reusing your food waste, which I think is great. So, okay, what can't be composted? So kind of as a general rule, you want to stay away from any meat, fish, dairy, any products kind of along those lines. Those are the things that are going to attract bugs, rodents, maggots, yuck. Like, you don't want that in your backyard. And I think, again, that's what people sort of think of when they think of composting, and then they think, ew, I don't want that in my backyard. I'm not going to try that. But so you stay away from those things. And honestly, we've never had an issue. We've always gone though with a sealed container. So like this has a sealed door that shuts. The other bin we've used also had a top to it, so we never have done the open pile. So I'd be interested to know if the open pile attracts anything, but we've never had an issue with that. So fruits and vegetables as they're decomposing can sometimes attract fruit flies. So again, having this sort of sealed container helps with that, but you can also make sure your mix is kind of on the drier side. So if it seems to be attracting fruit flies, seems to be on the wet side, you can add some more brown and sort of keep that a little bit more balanced and dry it out a little bit. I think you can tell when it's kind of not got the right mix, either it's too wet or too dry, and then you can sort of just adjust for that. So that's kind of a really basic how to, what to put in your compost bin, greens, browns, a little bit more brown than green. You need to aerate it in some way, either by tumbling it in a composter like this, or mixing it up with like a pitchfork or something if you've got an open bin, or just a stationary bin. So that's really basic composting for you and how it works. There are a couple of other options. One is using earthworms to compost and break down your organic material. I have personally never tried that, although I know my kids had a worm composting bin in elementary school as part of their science class, which seemed really cool. And basically what it means is the worms are feeding on the organic material, digesting it, and then the result is your composted material. So I did find a pretty good video on YouTube that I will link to that does a good job of explaining kind of what it is and how it works and how to get started. Apparently it's very simple. It's just not something that I have tried. So one other option that I wanted to mention is, if you want to compost, you want to stop putting food waste in the trash, and you want to compost, but either you're intimidated, you don't have the time, or you just don't want to do it at home, you can enlist the help of a compost pickup service. Basically means you're still doing the separating of food, you are keeping your food scraps separate and kind of collecting them, and then on a regular basis the service will basically come by, pick up your compost, and take it to probably a commercial facility where they will manage the composting process. So that is something that we tried a couple of years ago, and it actually has worked out really well. Their list of what's acceptable is actually longer than what I can compost here in my backyard, and so we have stuck with that over the last few years, and keep so much waste out of the trash can. It's so much is diverted into being compost, which is great. Now, unfortunately, our county doesn't provide that as a service, so we do pay a monthly fee to have that picked up. But to me, it's worth it to keep all of that out of the landfill, to enlist their help, to have them pick up our compost for us every week. So it's just once a week. I'm actually sitting on the bin. It's just a small kind of paint can bin that we fill up. I keep it in my kitchen under the counter. It does not smell at all. It's kind of like if you were just dumping it in the trash anyway and it was sitting there until you took the trash out. It just happens to be in a separate bin. So that's been a great kind of addition to our landfill diversion tactics. So that's another option. I know there are other types of composting, different ways and things you can use, if you don't have a backyard as well. And so I'd love to hear if any of you are using kind of those methods as well. So anyway, I think that kind of covers off on everything I wanted to touch on, which was kind of just the basics, how to get started, general basics and tips for what to put in your compost bin, how to manage it. And one quick thing about the pickup service is that every few months we get a huge bag of composted material back from them. So that's part of our part of the service. So anyway, I can leave a link to the company that I use. And I did find a website that I think does a pretty good job of listing by state home compost pickup services. So I'll leave a link for that as well for you to check out if you are interested in starting composting at home, either by doing it yourself or by using a pickup service. So anyway, I hope that's helpful. I hope it gives you some basics and maybe gets you thinking a little bit more about, hey, I can compost and it's really not that hard and it's not going to smell and I'm not going to have bugs and rodents and everything all over my backyard. And if you have questions, certainly let me know. But hopefully this is helpful, and I will talk to you guys soon. Okay, thanks. Bye.